Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Anna Wells and Andy Zoll. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Andy, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also reach Jeff at IN.com with Feel Better, Jeff, in the subject line. How you doing this week, Andy?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Glad.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's been a couple weeks, so usually I go like 6 to 8 weeks between appearances, but get more time this season.
And we did give you at least a little bit more heads up. It was like last night. It's like, heads up, Jeff has the sniffles.
That really does help me. I appreciate it. Just even if there's like a 10% chance, it's nice to have that in the back of my head.
Start mentally preparing yourself now.
Yep.
Anna, how are you feeling? Feeling well and healthy today?
Yeah, no sniffles here.
Okay, that's good. That's good. It's good that we social distance from Jeff until podcast day.
Right, yeah. We sit like directly across. I'm in like sniffling distance of Jeff.
Oh, you are.
All the time, so.
Within sneezing distance. That's no good. That's no good. Well, before we jump into a word from our sponsor, you can remember to also subscribe on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday at about 2 p.m. Now, a word from our new sponsor. Well, old sponsor that's back. He's new again. Oracle NetSuite.
Thanks for joining us today as we discuss a very popular topic in the industrial sector and, well, pretty much any market where companies like to keep the lights on and make money. And that's how to improve and expand operations. I mean, this seems like a very familiar and obvious goal, but just like anything else, there's a right and a wrong way, or at least better ways of achieving these types of goals. Today, we're going to discuss 3 of the 7 recommended strategies. We'll finish up with the last 4 in part 2 of the series.
Hey, we're back. This week's episode is brought to you by Oracle NetSuite. Listen now to a new podcast, How to Improve and Expand Your Business Operations. In this episode, Jeff and I actually discuss a very popular topic in the industrial sector and pretty much any market where companies like to keep the lights on and make money. Both important. So download it now. Let us know what you think. Our first story this week. California testing surveillance method to tax EV drivers. Gas taxes are, quote, dwindling in California. According to Motor Trend, the funds used for road repair and highway projects are shrinking because, in part, the state was home to 37% of light-duty EVs sold in 2022. So, Caltrans, California's transportation department, is looking for new ways to draw blood from the stone. The department launched Road Charge, a pilot program that will tax you based on the number of miles you drive. Now, how are they going to do this? The pilot wants volunteers to either take a picture of their odometer and submit it, or allow a tracking device to be installed. Caltrans wants to see if a per-mile fee can be a, quote, fair and sustainable way to replace the gas tax. To entice volunteers, the department is offering $400 if you complete the pilot over the next 6 months. While many don't believe that Californians will buy into the new tax, it might not matter. Andy, reports say that the road use fee could be implemented for all California drivers by July 1, 2025. So, do you think there's going to be any pushback on this one?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's a fee and or a tax, so there's likely to be pushback regardless of what we're talking about. I thought this was an interesting story just because it's specific to California, if only for the volume of electric vehicles that they buy. Mm-hmm. But this is an issue that every state has been wrestling with for years, going back to 2 decades ago when cars just started getting more fuel efficient, and that erodes the previous model of how we funded. States generally funded roads, which was people paid taxes on the gas they used to fill their cars, and that money went into a pot, at least in Wisconsin where we live. And then that is used to pay for repairs, new construction, that sort of thing. So because people are driving more and not using as much gas, that formula is basically broken coast to coast. So will this fly? I mean, I'm kind of skeptical that people will sign up to have their phones track how much they're driving, even though their phones are already tracking everything else they do.
Yeah.
But I'm almost hopeful that it works because nobody's figured this out.
Yeah.
And if you don't figure out something that pays for roads based on the miles that people drive, that money has to come from somewhere else, or you could just let the roads rot, but it has to come from somewhere else at the expense of other state and municipal funding, schools, services, that sort of thing. So I hope it works to a point. And then if it does somehow, that might make it more palatable for other states who are also looking for this sort of solution. States who might have, let's say, different politics than California.
Well, and to your point, for the last 20 years or so, I feel like we've tried the just let it rot mentality.
Definitely around
really
here.
Hasn't worked.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been tricky. Tough going around here.
Well, the other thing is just how smart it has or how easy it has become to create like fake photos. So that's why I was kind of surprised that one of the solutions was, no, just take a picture of your odometer and then send us one in 6 months and you get $400. You'll be fine.
I mean, they must have a way to validate that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe they have to. It has to be notarized. Someone's got to come
there
out.
you go.
Check it out.
Internet notary.
So, and I mean, the reality is that we have this massive revenue void amidst already failing infrastructure. And Andy's right. We do need a solution, but I feel like this is, I don't know. I feel like for some people, myself included, this seems a little too Big Brother in terms of the tracking possibilities.
It definitely feels Big Brother. I know that, like to Andy's point, like this stuff's, I mean, we all have like iPasses and OnStar and phones. And like, I mean, to think that this is somehow going to add a layer of tracking that's not already there is sort of, I don't know. I feel like that's
maybe a little naive.
A little optimistic about like where we are now. But
so when they roll this out on July 1st, they're just going to say like, oh no, we already turned it on your phones. Don't worry about it.
Well, yes. And I think, that doesn't mean that people aren't going to object to it. Of course, I think there's tons of people out there that are going to say like, personally, I don't want this in my vehicle. I can see both sides of the debate here on why or why not this should apply to all drivers. My guess is that the state of California would maybe find it to be more manageable to have everyone on the same system of taxation, even though ICE drivers paying at the pump right now is working for them. I can't imagine how much more work goes into the process of self-reported odometer data.
Yeah.
Like to your point around fakery, that was my first thought too. Like how easy is it to fake these photos? Like pretty doable maybe if you're motivated. I don't know. Like, are you paying people to review the photos? Do you have to invest in some sort of AI system? What happens if the photos aren't submitted? And if the only secondary option to the photo process is a device that tracks your driving habits, then you are again going to get a ton of pushback.
And I think the idea of people taking photos of their odometer, it's only realistic for the pilot project.
Yeah.
Like that's not something that could actually be rolled out. I think you raised a really good point. Like this is something that is much more easy to execute with registration fees, right? But I mean, we're talking about those going up like astronomically then.
Well, it sounds like California is like 2/3 of the way there with, like they have a gap, but it's not like the entire program a gap. They already raised those fees.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Can you just bump
Just
them up a little bit? I don't know.
That's what they've been trying.
Yeah. But the most equitable way to do it is with the plug-in device. And so it's, I guess, which battle do you want to fight on that? Because for me, like if and when it becomes a mandatory plug-in device, like the progressive snapshot that everybody had, I don't know. I just hate it because of the amount of information that can be pulled off of that. And you can tell me it's just going to be limited to miles, but there is no way it's just limited to miles. There's no way.
That's why I think that this is like the hardest way to skin the cat, because that there's all kinds of people that just at their core are going to object to this, even if it means they actually pay less because they don't drive as much or whatever, I don't know that people are going to be like, yes, put it in my car. I don't care.
There'd probably be a lot of, let's say, maybe some less than genuine pushback in the public sphere on that sort of stuff too. Worried about the state tracking you and all that.
Political. Oh man. I mean, honestly, the politicians love this kind of thing because it's just like, we have talking points for days on this. And Anna, to your skinning a cat saying, I've got to say, it's got to change to pilling a cat, because pilling a cat, I believe, with a sick cat in the house is much more difficult. I feel like I could skin that thing way easier.
Oh, like giving a cat a pill?
Just 2 times a day of giving cats medicine down the throat. No, thank you. My legs are forever scarred.
Yeah, I've never tried to skin any cats, so I don't know.
Me neither.
Maybe it's easy.
Yeah, I mean, I've cleaned a chicken once. That wasn't great. So I feel like it's got to be pretty close. Equally wiry, similar sharp objects swinging at you. Anyway, back to big data. Like, I wanted to talk about how, big data was always this big nebulous thing for so long. But now that it's become so much more manageable, everyone is seeing the value in it, particularly with AI, and everybody wants a piece. And so that's why when we're talking about, no, just plug this into your car. We're just tracking miles. Don't worry about it. Not pulling any other information or categorizing you in any other way. And I mean, we joke about wearables and implantables revolutionizing healthcare also, but do we want everything tracked? I mean, and one reader, I thought, kind of to your point, Andy, one reader was kind of ahead of it in terms of, okay, we have seen the crippling gap that this has created with our infrastructure. We need to get ahead of this in terms of how we are automating more jobs. And we might potentially, as Elon Musk say, have like a lot of less people in the workforce. This reader says, imagine what happens when we have robots that don't pay taxes, as do humans who work for a living. That loss better be calculated now before that industry also gets a setback after so much investment. We require a total relook of our good intentions, which do not match economic reality. I thought that was a really solid point, just in terms of like, hey, we might lose a chunk of income tax revenue. And it's something that maybe we should start thinking about now so we don't wind up in a similar hole.
I think probably fears about jobs going away because of automation. Maybe types of jobs will certainly go away, but as far as broad employment, those fears might be a little overblown. But there will be, probably a larger gap between people making a lot more money and people making a lot less.
But I mean, think about it in comparison to 20 years ago when, cars, sure, they're a little bit more efficient. Okay, we're not getting the same amount of revenue, but like how much is it actually, and then as a result of not addressing it right away, it's this massive gulf.
It's not a massive gulf. It's fixable.
It's a gulf.
I think you're being dramatic.
Well, I'm being dramatic for the sake
of
the
like
pocket.
I used to sort of cover this racket for a living, and it feels like, I can't remember in what year gas prices really spiked, but it was almost instantaneous that everyone basically stopped buying SUVs until those became more fuel efficient. It was the market just immediately saying, we're not driving gas guzzlers anymore. Hummers went completely out the window.
Yeah.
So it can happen faster than you think.
Yeah. But sorry that my dramatic behavior is shocking you.
It's not a shock. No, that's not at all what I meant.
It's not a shock. It's just enough already. Okay, our next most popular story. $25,000 Jeep EV to hit U.S. market, quote, very soon. Carlos Tavares, the CEO of Stellantis, has made a bold pledge. As of January, the average sale price of a new vehicle was some $47,000. The average sale price of a new electric car, $55,000. But Tavares says buyers can expect a new Jeep Electric to hit the U.S. market very soon. The price? Around $25,000. Tavares says Stellantis will leverage its global engineering prowess to ease sticker shock for American shoppers. If you remember, the company did the same with the €20,000 Citroën EC3 in Europe. Tavares says it's the company's job to, quote, bring the safe, clean, and affordable BEV to the U.S. $25,000. We'll do it. Anna, will and can Stellantis do it?
I like the words very soon because they're very vague.
Yes.
We can really, kind of decide what that means. I don't know. This looks like a pretty interesting feat for Stellantis. It's a very ambitious proposal for a company that's been an EV laggard in the U.S. And add to that some concerns I've read in the market about what Stellantis does offer now, and that's the Fiat 500e. It's their only EV on the market in the U.S. right now. They have a Jeep that's kind of close, but not there. Much more expensive than this one.
More than twice, right?
Yeah. So right now that Fiat starts around $33,000 and it gets about 149 miles of range. So to put that into perspective, that is the second lowest range of any electric that's on the market in the U.S. right now. The average is nudging like 300 miles of range. So think about what a niche product that is and how small it is at $33,000 to start. So there have been a lot of news stories lately on lease price comparisons for that vehicle where the writers are really flabbergasted about what's being charged for it. MSN called it a terrible deal. Jalopnik said, what the hell was Fiat thinking with this new 500e lease price? But really comparing it to the Hyundai Kona EV, which has 200 plus range, literally is half the price of this this Fiat 500e. So forgive me if Stellantis is pledged to set the floor on price in a market where they have no presence as of yet, besides what observers have universally agreed is one very overpriced option. That doesn't pass the sniff test for me. I think that if you also consider what Stellantis is doing in Europe right now to leapfrog competitors, is they established a joint venture with a Chinese company called Leap Motor to sell vehicles in Europe. And that's a strategy that they can't even translate to the U.S. market because of tariffs on Chinese-made vehicles. So for their Leap Motor initiative to work here, they would need to either build some more factories stateside, or they would need to do some very unique supply chain shifts, probably via Mexico.
Yeah.
So Stellantis says it's looking at those possibilities as well as other options, the direct quote, other options. But the point is not an easy road. And Stellantis is already behind.
Yeah.
So talking about a price point that is really like a scale price point for scale that they do not have, I just think that's going to be a lot easier said than done.
Yeah. It's, but he's going to do it very soon.
Very soon.
Very soon. And what was the other options?
Other options.
Everyone's going to have a lot of options very soon. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
One thing that I do think is that Jeep is a great brand to do it with, though. But especially for the Jeep owner, not the quote Jeeper. The person who outfits a Jeep with add-ons, stuff like that. I don't know. I think the Jeep brand caters well to sort of your typical EV consumer.
Of course, and Jeeps are very popular. However, it's, that's easy to say, like, oh, it'd be great to have a really cheap, Ford Explorer EV that's like $25,000 because people love those. Well, yeah, they do, but
and
there's a lot more involved in that than just like putting that on the market. And
no, they're gonna get one very soon.
Very soon.
Andy, what were your thoughts on this story? I mean, if it does happen, if Stellantis is able to figure this out for an electric Jeep, what does that mean for American EVs?
Well, I think it means that if they're able to do it, that's what a lot of companies have kind of set their goal as, Tesla included. They want this mass market EV that appeals to people without sacrificing range and a lot of other hangups people have with EVs, so it can actually overhaul the car market like people have been thinking for years and years and years now. So there's a couple things that I thought here. First of all, is that EVs has been a sluggish market in recent years. Sales growth is still increasing, but not just at the rate people expected or wanted.
Yeah.
So if there's this hypothetical Jeep out there very soon, that probably appeals to more people than, say, a Nissan Leaf would. But the Citroën, is that how you pronounce that? Citroën?
I said Citroën with confidence.
Okay,
so I feel like that's the way to say it.
We'll own it. So the Citroën, they say, is just shy of 200 miles of range. If that's the kind of window they're looking at, I don't know if that gets over the hurdle of people's hesitancy about EVs. That also goes along with infrastructure concerns, price concerns, that sort of thing. So, I think it's fair to be a little skeptical about this one.
I understand this. I understand the skepticism.
Hopeful yet skeptical.
Okay. I mean, well, that's a good way to describe my reaction to the story as well, because, I'm not the EV adopter yet. I'm still on the fence. And when you take something like a Jeep brand and a $25,000 price point, that gets me thinking like, okay, that's something that kind of knocks down almost all my barriers to entry.
I would 100% buy one of these. If it existed.
At $25,000.
Which it doesn't. Correct.
Which it doesn't, yeah.
Yes. In this very soon landscape.
Yeah, get your money together.
Yes.
Soon.
I'll pay for it now. I was just questioning, could this make Jeepers out of all of us? Because traditionally, Jeep stands for just empty every pocket. I mean, hey, when you're starting so cheap, like, for people that want to outfit the Jeep, it's a slippery slope apparently for people that like to
what is that, like off-roading stuff or
yeah no, it's not
I'm
just
not
like
a Jeeper, as you may or may not have suspected.
No, I figured that. I mean, I'm not a Jeeper either. I mean, I think this extends well beyond people that just have a witty saying on the spare tire on the back. I read one review of the Citroen EC3, and it described it as a comfy and rather charming little car that's great value, yet also has useful range. And I feel like if they could figure that out with a cheap Jeep at scale, they'd be in business. Which
of course I don't think they would.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're going to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Everyone would love this. You have to make it though. And it just doesn't seem realistic to me.
Well, and they just
very soon.
They also unveiled that car in October of last year. As of December, they had 10,000 reservations. And I always like when they throw that number out. Like, yeah, you can get a reservation for free on our website. And it's just like, with no, like it actually, I think it says with no skin in the game in the release. And I'm just like, good?
Yeah. Pretty easy to get those.
Yeah. Maybe turn a handful into a pre-order. All right. Well, our next most popular story. Orange juice makers may switch to a different fruit. Big OJ is facing a crisis. Orange production has been crippled by disease and bad weather. According to the orange crop forecast for the citrus belt in Brazil, the world's largest producer and exporter of orange juice, the industry will experience a 24% drop in orange production. This could be the second worst year for oranges since 1988, which wasn't that long ago. Don't think about it. Orange production in Florida has also declined this year. Keys Cools, president of the International Fruit and Vegetable Juice Association, called the record high prices for frozen concentrate orange juice a, quote, crisis, and went so far as to say that the industry has never seen anything like it. So, what are orange juice manufacturers going to do? It sounds like they may have to pivot citrus and supplement beverages with other fruit. But before they source other citrus, the International Fruit and Vegetable Juice Association must complete a regulatory process for incorporating fruits other than oranges into orange juice. This would take legislative changes to food standards established by the UN and the FDA. However, hope remains. The USDA says global tangerine and mandarin production will rise 3% to 38 million tons due to good weather in China and Turkey. Is this natural? I mean, and I sometimes feel that crops have a bad year and we all feel the squeeze.
Had to do it.
I had to do it. But I mean, that was to Ben. Ben did the story. He was saying that everyone was feeling the squeeze.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to bring it to our level as to how this situation could make us all feel the squeeze. That's an orange pun.
Like juice.
I loved Ben's presentation here about like, if you need to make orange juice, you usually use oranges.
Yeah.
It's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, I know. This feels shocking, I know. But unfortunately, I think we're just kind of scratching the surface on some of the changes that we're going to see to agriculture as the world warms. There have been a lot of studies and predictions on this. And I'm about to be a serious downer, so if anyone needs to like skip ahead, feel free. But some of these are more dystopian than others, people's predictions about what foods are going to be lost to climate change. One of the most optimistic conversations about this is how to nurture production of crops that are better built to withstand or even thrive in a warmer climate. Wired put together a great report a few months back talking about grains like millet, which can be grown in the U.S. alongside other grains and be harvested with some of the equipment that farmers already have. And it takes the place in some cases of crops like corn that have been really struggling the last few years to survive when it's really hot and really dry. Something like millet uses water much more efficiently and just uniquely suited to be grown in a drought condition.
What is millet?
It's like a grain. It's an ancient grain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what my ancient grain bread is made of? It's partially millet?
Probably.
It might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
So Wired points to other research around like seed crops, hemp. Obviously, these are just examples, but I think it speaks to some of the modifications that are going to need to take place in the food industry. And there will be more fallout, right? So as Wired points out, moving key crops to other areas, as some people are suggesting, like let's just move production, let's plant them elsewhere. The world's warming, we'll just move it up.
Mm-hmm. Just keep moving it up.
Yeah. In many cases, that's really taking the process away from subsistence farmers. So you're not only taking away their work and removing this industry, but their food supply, So there are a lot of consequences to that. We talk about the impacts of climate change. There's a lot of big changes that we're going to face here. Some with tragic consequences, I think, if we allowed this to take place without any contingency plan. So for manufacturers, there's going to be a lot of flexing that we're going to see in the food industry, especially food and bev, seeing some of the transformational change that will take place there. You're talking about ingredients, full product lines, supply chains. Not only that, pricing, because as soon as you have scarcity that comes with poor yields of any kind of crop, then that will add to the purchase price there, and it's going to change the market. So, again, this is an example. It's not applying to every food, everything that's grown in ag right now, but it's something that companies need to keep in mind in terms of like how they're going to mitigate the approach to the business when temperatures continue to warm, as we believe that they will.
So in January 2020, a pound of oranges cost 95 cents. Last week, they were almost $5 a pound. So, I mean, it's already happening. We're already experiencing it. One of the questions I had is that at what percentage, once you start cutting the orange juice, at what point does it stop becoming orange juice?
And it's like then tangerine juice?
Yeah, or not, or, just like a OJ blend from concentrate. How we see everything on a shelf and it's like cranberry juice, 98% pears.
Yeah, I mean, it just may become the new normal if this continues to take place. Just maybe the reality of that situation.
So I know that you thought you were kind of being a downer there. I think you're being more of a realist. Do you think that food manufacturers are getting ahead of this? Because I feel like especially when we look at the academic side of things, it looks like people are researching how to come up with crops that are more suited to changing conditions, that are a bit more robust. And that has to do with, everything from like human and gut health as well to the health of our soil. Do you think we're doing enough, or we're at least headed in the right direction in terms of planning?
I mean, it's hard to feel that as a consumer. I believe that food manufacturers are well equipped to handle this change. A lot of them are involved in associations and organizations that track this stuff, that do forecasting, that, they have a feel for what's happening here, that they're not burying their heads in the sand, but they're also not going to change products until they absolutely have to. Yeah. So, and it becomes a crisis that it doesn't make sense for Ocean Spray to be like, hey, we're getting ahead of this and we're going to start cutting out, until they have to. Yeah. They won't until they have to.
Andy, I know that you're closer to the food manufacturing market than any of us, being the lead editor on that. How do you think climate change will play a role on the food manufacturing industry going forward?
I mean, it's immense. I mean, it's hard to make broad statements just because there are projections of, how things will, advance, but it's hard to predict how a lot of these are subject to individual weather patterns in localized areas. Like Florida's citrus crop has been annihilated the past couple of years, mostly annihilated by hurricanes. So whether that'll happen constantly or just more often, it's hard to say. It's just, as you guys were talking about the importance of kind of having contingency plans for how to deal with it. As far as this specific issue goes, it's obviously huge for companies, producers raising their costs, which are then passed on to consumers. It's much more serious for orange growers. But I was kind of with you when you were asking what makes orange juice.
Yeah.
In this scenario, it reads more like a logistical issue to me. Like they just want the Congress and the FDA and the UN to change the definition of orange juice. I mean, if you go to your local large grocery store, you can, I mean, how many orange whatever blends are there? I mean, you can already sell these products without going to change standards at the UN.
Yeah.
So what is the floor? Do we know what they're lobbying for here? Like 60%?
I didn't see
70%?
that. I didn't see that in the I struggle with, like, are there people out there who draw the line at, like, I want 100% orange juice and I absolutely will not drink like orange pineapple, which is delicious.
Yeah, no, it
is.
I mean, I know that there's going to be plenty of people out there.
Well, they'll be mad about it, but they'll be mad about
for like
whatever.
A day.
Right. Yeah, everybody's mad about it.
It'd be interesting to see how many people are mad about it and then how many of those people are already buying blends because
I feel like they'd
straight
be more,
OJ is already really expensive.
Yeah, I feel like they'd be much more mad if they were looking at 100% orange juice and then saw like pineapple or banana on the other side.
Yeah.
That seems much more likely to draw people's ire than just blending orange with plum or whatever right off the bat.
Plum?
I don't know.
Oh,
I do remember,
Andy.
talk about like our
Take it back.
talking about our labeling discussion last year, though. I mean, that was like one of, not the first times, but that was like a time in my life where I remember feeling like I had been lied to because I had bought like cranberry juice or like it was like a cranberry grape blend, and then you turn it around to look at the ingredients and the first ingredient is pear juice.
See, you don't like to be lied to.
And you're just like, that's a legit lie though.
You also really don't want pure cranberry juice.
Oh, I know, man. I've had that. It is tart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can taste it.
Yeah.
But so this might, I mean, it's going to be a big issue either way, but demand has fallen like crazy. So according to the Florida citrus growers, orange juice has experienced one of the largest demand drops of all juices over the last 5 years. And it's, as a result, it's just not as available. So between 2000 and 2001 and 2022 to 2023, so in 2001, it was about 5 gallons of orange juice that was available for every person in the United States.
What?
And that's down to 2 gallons a person. I know that. I mean, to me, I'm just like, that's good. Have mine. You can have my 2 gallons.
Yeah, I'm not having any of those gallons.
Yeah. Oh man, and it's just, I mean, I'm very sympathetic about this entire situation, but just hating orange juice. I'm just like, let it go the way of the mosquito. But orange juice and mosquitoes, get them out of here, regardless of the ecological disaster that may ensue. But and consumption is expected to continue to decline. They're expecting another 20% decrease in orange juice consumption in 2024. So it just might seem like there might be a lot of economic indicators out there that just suggest that people aren't pining for straight OJ anymore.
Do you think that's a price issue or a sugar reduction issue or?
Because of the diabetes?
Yeah.
No,
I think it's because it's gross. No,
David.
I know.
That is I've heard some interesting food takes. That's a strong one. That's right up there.
Not universally held opinion.
Understood. That's my own individual take. No, I think it could be a combination of both. Like, I've been surprised by how many people steer their kids away, even from like having too much fruit. And I'm just like, you know what? In all the battles we're waging as parents, like, I'm not fighting the fruit battle.
No.
Just have it. But I mean, it could be like definitely having sugar intake under a microscope, but I don't know. Like,
I'm the same way, by the way. I used to drink a ton of orange juice and I really don't anymore. I'll buy oranges, like regular oranges, but juice,
and
not really.
And wash them.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. Part of it is, I also saw that, so according to a 2022 CDC report, only 12% of American adults are getting the recommended amount of fruit. So like, I mean, this has obviously got to go kind of hand in hand with, like, we've seen, less people drinking it, less people eating it. And so, only 1 in 10 Americans is getting enough in their diet, which has been kind of crazy when you think about it, especially with how plant-based diets and lifestyles have kind of like grown exponentially. I don't know. That seems surprising to me. Anyway. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say fruit is awesome. I like fruit a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's completely agree. Like, I'm not coming out anti-fruit here. Just, acidity is a problem for me. All right, our next most popular story. Boat manufacturer lays off nearly 300 at Wisconsin factory. Boat and engine maker BRP US recently announced mass layoffs in Sturtevant, Wisconsin. Some 298 employees at the factory will lose their jobs due to, quote, adverse market and economic conditions. BRP laid off the first 150 workers on March 21st, followed by 148 more that were cut on May 23rd. The layoffs include new and low-hour employees from the quality, manufacturing, and engineering departments, among others. The former employees will receive pay in lieu of notice, and the plant still has 350 employees on staff. The company hopes the cuts give it a chance to reduce inventory while ensuring the ability to increase production if and when demand rises. The timing is odd because about 7 months ago, reports surfaced of a $14 million investment that the company was going to make to expand the factory in Sturtevant and build an off-site shipping yard. The company wanted to boost production of the Sea-Doo Switch pontoon. But recent first quarter results revealed a net loss of $7.4 million and a 16% decline in revenue compared to last year for BRP. It should be noted that BRP last year also started construction on a boat manufacturing plant in Chihuahua City, Mexico, that's going to create about 1,300 jobs and come online next year. At least they're keeping the doors open, right? But for how long? Anna, is this a short-term solution with nearshoring on the horizon?
I don't know. To me, like the first thing that stood out to me was it felt like another industry where we could blame COVID for this sort of boom and bust cycle that that we're seeing here. Because it looks like company leaders were thinking maybe they could hang their hats on the pandemic boost that was going to last forever.
Yeah.
And, BRP is saying that the boat industry is in a slowdown, and that checks out. Like, it isn't a surprise. Powerboat retail sales were projected to be down approximately 1% to 3% for 2023, and then about the same in 24. The data says that industry-wide, this was propped up by smaller boats with like entry-level pricing. That's not what the Sea-Doo Switch is.
No.
Some unit categories of powerboats saw declines as high as 25%. And part of this, I think, has to be pandemic related, right? There was a record 1 million people bought recreational boats for the first time during the pandemic. And so in the years following, I think two things are likely to happen. One, you have a bunch of people who don't need boats because they just bought them. Mm-hmm. And you crammed kind of a few years of sales all into one. And then two, you have a bunch of people selling very lightly used boats. And so you're sort of flooding the inventory on the resale market, and that eats into new boat sales, of course. So seems predictable. I know it when it was happening, everyone was like, this is our new normal. We never go anywhere. We're just going to be on our boats now.
Just us alone on a boat in the middle of the lake.
But like the same thing happened with the RV industry. Tons of people bought RVs.
Yeah.
And then the same exact scenario. So, the National Marine Manufacturers Association said the industry continues to navigate interest rates as well as ongoing shifts in consumer confidence, and that manufacturers are focused on continuing to deliver innovative new products and will showcase emerging technologies as they go forth. And the Sea-Doo Switch was that for them. They created this cool pontoon that was like kind of works like a jet ski, and it's inside you can you have a modular layout, so you can move.
Configurable.
Yeah, configure it to your application for the day of more fishing or family or whatever you want to do with it. It's a cool product, but it's a little bit expensive, and it was probably a lot of R&D money. And so if you have low sales, you have high R&D costs that you're trying to absorb over that same time period, you can't carry that for very long before you have to start making cuts. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Will it come back as the market shifts? Maybe. But again, interest rates, like that has to change for people. What's an interest rate on a boat loan right now? It's probably, I don't even want to know.
Yeah.
And secondly, yes, consumer confidence. People are just maybe they're not there for that type of purchase right now because people are kind of in wait and see. So there's a lot of factors involved here. I don't think you could point to exactly one thing, but a lot of reasons why this might happen here.
Well, I think the first one you mentioned, a bunch of people buying boats. I mean, that's very real. But I thought one of the when the pandemic kind of took a break, or didn't break, but pandemic restrictions eased, I thought that it was going to open up more of a secondary market for people that maybe made impulse purchases during that time. But we just haven't seen that. Not as many people that they've been holding on. They're just happy with their boats, which is great, because if you've ever been on a boat, it's great. It's terribly expensive and a lot to maintain, but so I do think that's a real problem. You make a really good point that you have a couple of years of like boat purchases that all happened in 1 to 2 years. And maybe they should have been planning for that a little bit better. I also hung on to that quote, the adverse market and economic conditions. I mean, I think there is more of that to come as well. It's the result of inflation. And I just have to imagine that the boat money goes first.
That's
right?
got to be your first cut is a boat that you can reconfigure.
Yeah, we can't buy the configurable boats because we're buying too much orange juice.
I mean, given the choice, I think I'd want the boat, right?
I mean, definitely. Yes.
David does.
I mean, yes, 100%. I'm going to name it No Oranges.
Throw that orange juice overboard.
Mm-hmm. Orange tears.
We've all seen that inflation is kind of easing, not as quickly as anyone would like, but it's kind of easing off very, very gradually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still too high for the Fed to reduce interest rates, which means the rates are so even though the economy is still rolling along, the rates to buy big purchases are expensive, and that's what's getting hit right now. So boats, RVs, cars, that sort of thing. So you would hope, and that's the company said this, is that they'll be able to adjust so that when demand returns, they'll be able to grow with it. Maybe that means jobs. I don't know, but it's kind of hard to square that with their new factory in Mexico, because they announced it in January, which, as we've just discussed, was not a time of great optimism for the recreational boating industry.
Right.
So I think that if and when demand recovers, the work might be headed there rather than Sturtevant. That
was one of my thoughts as well. Do you think that they're just in a holding pattern, basically? Because when is the facility coming online? Next year. So yeah, they have 350 employees in Sturtevant, Wisconsin. If you're one of those employees, are you maybe getting the resume ready?
I would.
Yeah. I threw the Jeep acronym out there. Do you know what the boat acronym is?
Oh no.
No. I was going to guess, but no, I don't.
No, it's BOAT stands for Break Out Another 1,000. And as a geriatric boat owner, that one checks out. It's just like, oh, you're just going to go and look at the little oil thing. How much? What happened? The whole backside, huh? All right.
I'm familiar with the best day or two best days of boat ownership, or the day you buy it and the day you get rid of it. One. Yeah. No, that's. I'm hoping we don't get to that second one. You want the friend with the boat. That's what you want.
That's all you need.
Oh yeah. We got the friend with the pool. We need the friend with the boat. Anna, is it nearshoring or outsourcing when a U.S. manufacturer moves to Mexico? Is it both? Because, technically they're nearshoring because they're keeping the production in Mexico, but it's also outsourcing.
Yeah, it is.
Should this be like outsourcing?
Well, it is both. I mean, nearshoring is a very nice way of saying it, but
yeah, I just want to make sure.
Are we talking about American jobs? Then of course it's outsourcing.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we get our jargon right here. Also, what are your thoughts on the idea of payment in lieu of notice? That was one thing that kind of stood out to me, because these payments in lieu of notice, that's something that's normally made, or that employers use to terminate an employee immediately, paying them for the notice period that they would have been entitled to. But that's normally because keeping the worker would be detrimental or unfavorable to the company. So that was one thing that was kind of surprising to me, that they decided to do this. Just like, you know what? Don't need you. See ya.
I mean, for the worker, like if it's me, yeah, payment in lieu of notice sounds good. Get me out of there and I'll start looking for a job with this basically severance in my pocket.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think it's great for the morale of the worker to be like on their death march to the end of their job for 90 days.
Wants to go to a doomed job every morning.
Yeah, just
We've all been there.
For sure.
No, that's true. And I guess if in the scenario, it would be where, as a result of demand, you just need another hand on deck for production. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the scenario.
Did you do the hand on deck thing for the boat story?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. It was in there somewhere. All right. Our next most popular story. I think our most popular story this week, F-35 crashes after leaving Lockheed Martin factory. A $90 million F-35 fighter is a total loss after a catastrophic accident this week. The plane left an assembly plant in Texas en route to a California Air Force base when it crashed into a hillside. The jet recently underwent modification after being delivered in September. The pilot ejected before impact, but was still taken to the hospital with serious injuries. Lockheed Martin, which made the plane, said the crash happened when the pilot stopped to refuel at Kirtland Air Force Base near Albuquerque. The pilot worked for the DoD's Defense Contract Management Agency. In a statement, Lockheed Martin said, quote, "Safety is our priority, and we will follow appropriate investigation protocol." The aircraft is being described as a test jet that was in the process of transferring to Edwards Air Force Base for additional updates. Andy, this is just not good news, especially for an F-35 program that's supposed to cost an estimated $2 trillion over its lifespan.
This is a initiative that's kind of been run through the ringer over the past couple of decades. It's the report said, at least the last I had read about it, that the pilot was in stable condition. I think a couple other people went in for evaluation, but nobody was killed, which is obviously great news. But as far as the F-35 itself, I mean, this is one of a handful of specific incidents, but more of the problem with this program has been delays and high cost overruns. So just broadly, this is a report from Air and Space Forces magazine. As far as the program's what's called reliability, maintainability, and availability, that's been subject to numerous congressional hearings and GAO reports over the years, and the Pentagon has launched many initiatives meant to get mission capability rates back up. So, and there are also, with this aircraft in particular, which I think you're going to get into, some implications for its testing and modernization programs.
Yes, and it is, it's a particularly high-profile case, Anna. But, unlike when we talk about the Boeing stories of late, this aircraft, as Andy said, kind of has a pretty decent track record.
Yeah, ultimately, I think if you look at the whole case of the F-35 program, it does. I mean, so there are 3 Joint Strike Fighter variants that have been developed for the Air Force, the Marine Corps, and the Navy, the F-35A, B, and C, respectively. This is a F-35B. Mm-hmm. And experts say that the platform's estival. Is that how you're saying it?
Yes. Well, it's a V. Oh, yeah.
So it's a STOVL. Yeah. It's a short takeoff and vertical landing plane. It makes this variant the most mechanically complex version that's in service. However, the mechanically complex does not always equate to safety and service liability, right? And last year, the defense-oriented think tank, the Lexington Institute, cautioned conclusions like that based on isolated incidents. They say that the reality is that the F-35 has a better safety record up to this point in its development than previous generations of fighters, and that it crashes less and there are fewer fatalities. As for this $2 trillion number, yes, that is a monster, but it is spread across decades for this program. Still a big number, but maybe some context there. It makes more sense as an expenditure that spans half a century with this program. And I'd say, considering that it's basically one giant sensor, these new versions, we might actually find out with some degree of certainty what happened here. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, too, I think that it's really important to point out that this plane, the government had already taken delivery of this plane back in the fall.
Yep.
So it was back at the Lockheed factory being modified. So whatever they were doing there, obviously this is a test aircraft. Mm-hmm. Obviously something went wrong there. But
it was a quick test.
Yeah, but it was not being deployed for use by the military in action. So at least there we know that it was still kind of in dev.
Yeah. Oh no, at the surface level of this story, it's like, what now? It rolled off the production line and into the hillside. Not great. Mm-hmm. But so there is a little bit of there's a lot of unknowns that are on this current aircraft.
Right.
And it is a little bit more complicated than some people were led to believe. So I read a story from Breaking Defense, which really got into the weeds in this entire program and what this means kind of in the grand scheme of things. So as we kind of mentioned, this crashed F-35 was supposed to go to the small test fleets of aircraft. That's only 43 aircraft in this entire fleet. And most of them are older models that suffer from maintenance issues and other problems that you have with aging aircraft. This F-35 program relies heavily on labs to develop these upgrades that were going into this F-35, which are introduced to the real world on test beds like this F-35B that crashed on May 28th. I pulled a quote from Representative Rob Whitman. He's a Virginia Republican who chairs the House Armed Services Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee. He said, quote, "This incident will undoubtedly cause a technical setback for F-35 modernization and warrants an extensive and thorough investigation to determine the exact cause of this crash. I hope it is an extensive and thorough investigation into the crash. I hope it's not a politicized one, because we've seen the F-35 program become like this a political talking point. And, I think when it comes to something like this, we need to understand the root cause and how to prevent it going forward.
We cannot take for granted what happened here based on the fact that no one was killed, because it could very easily have gone another way. And so, yes, absolutely, it does warrant an extensive and thorough investigation. I don't think that's a particularly controversial claim. I think
yes.
That will happen, and we'll find out what exactly happened here.
All right. Well, before we move on to In Case You Missed It, we have another word from our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite.
Thanks for joining us today as we discuss a very popular topic in the industrial sector and, well, pretty much any market where companies like to keep the lights on and make money. And that's how to improve and expand operations. I mean, this seems like a very familiar and obvious goal, but just like anything else, there's a right and a wrong way, or at least better ways of achieving these types of goals. Today, we're going to discuss 3 of the 7 recommended strategies. We'll finish up with the last 4 in part 2 of the series.
And we're back. And just a reminder that this week's episode is brought to you by Oracle NetSuite. Listen now to the new podcast, How to Improve and Expand Your Business Operations. In this episode, Jeff and I talk about a very popular topic in the industrial sector and pretty much any market where companies like to keep the lights on and make money. How to improve and expand your business operations. Download it now. All right. In case you missed it, the story is maybe not as popular on the website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, what did you have for In Case You Missed It this week?
I am here with an update about Anchor Brewing.
Okay.
So the story is that the founder of Chobani has bought famed San Francisco craft brewer Anchor Brewing.
Like yogurt?
Chobani.
Yeah.
What?
Yogurt's getting into the beer biz?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's all fermented.
Okay.
Very true. Yeah. Let's get ready for it. The brewing company, which shuttered in a few months back, I can't remember exactly the time period, but it has been purchased by billionaire Hamdi Ulukaya, who started Chobani. Ulukaya says Anchor embodies much of what makes San Francisco so great, and he's excited to be part of the company's rebirth. He said that he's fallen in love with the city, its history, grit, and charm, and believes brands born in places like this are incredibly special and must be treasured, respected, and loved. Very nice.
Mm-hmm. That sounds real nice.
So, Anchor was established in 1896. It's been around for a really long time. It announced its closure amid declining sales, increased competition, just couldn't make it happen. I had to bring this story to the podcast because we covered it when Anchor announced its closure. And I looked back on that podcast to see exactly what my predictions were here.
Okay.
And I was not optimistic about Anchor's prospects at that time. You know, a craft beer company that has a corporate owner. I think they're trying to do two things at once in that circumstance. They engage in national distribution while also trying to maintain the like cool, independent, local vibe that people look for in craft beer. To me, that is a tough place to be. I still believe that to be true. That said, if anyone can do that, it is Hamdi Ulukaya, because if you look at Chobani's history, Chobani's market share of yogurt in the U.S. went from below 1% in 2007 to 20+% in 2021. Wow. And that's a massive swing, right? It is now the top-selling Greek yogurt brand in the United States. Not to mention, people didn't even really eat Greek yogurt before Chobani came on the scene. So I think, therefore, who better to create a niche for Anchor than this individual and his company? It needs to be able to survive and thrive in a market category that is full of challenges and full of competition. I think he understands how to cultivate a brand. And I think it will be fun to watch what he does with Anchor. So I was actually very interested to see this story and excited to see what happens next. Yeah.
I was a bit more optimistic that it would live on, but I'm surprised it took so long. Like, would you believe that story was already July 2023?
No, I mean, it does not seem like it was that long ago. But yeah, I know that we're coming up on a year now of it being really out of the market, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's odd to see sometimes how long a brand can go dormant, and then like, does it have to be dormant for a certain amount of time before it can have its dramatic reemergence? You know, or is it just, you know, like, is it hasn't not enough time passed?
Like when they brought back Crystal Pepsi and everyone was like, yes, it's been 25 years.
They brought that back
for like a second.
Very briefly.
Yeah. And
again,
same response.
Again,
yeah, just it's a pass for us.
Nobody wants this.
Andy, what was your thought on Anchor Brewing, 127-year history coming back?
It's an interesting investment just because of, as we've talked about, kind of the weird spot beer and especially craft beer is in. It's a sluggish market. There were so many startup craft brewers that have just kind of been cannibalizing each other. We've seen a couple around here.
Oh yeah.
Big names in at least the region that were making a lot of money but couldn't make a profit.
Yeah.
So Anchor, and there's Boston Beer, the brewer of Sam Adams. There's other ones that have been around longer than maybe other craft brewers that it's in a weird spot where they're nationally distributed. Everyone's heard of them. And I don't really know where they fit in. So it'll be interesting to see where the Chobani billionaire thinks they fit in, because I never really drank it a ton, but Anchor's pretty good. Yeah. It's a good beer.
He's going to figure it out, Andy.
Yeah.
It's like a sad reality of how, when we think of craft beer, like just how often when people are talking about it, like when we're talking about it as a group amongst ourselves, it's just like, oh yeah, they don't exist anymore. And how it's just like, oh, well, that happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's not heartbreaking. It's just the course of doing business. You know, some come and some go.
Yep.
All right. Andy, what'd you have for in case you missed it this week?
I brought a story about one of the, if not the world's largest automaker, it's either them or Volkswagen. The chairman of Toyota issued an apology for the automaker cheating on certification tests in its native Japan for 7 models, and also announcing that it had suspended production on 3 of them. The reports said the company used inadequate or outdated data in collision tests, conducted incorrect tests on airbags and rear seat damage in crashes, and falsified engine power tests. This is a couple-year-old problem that the government got involved with in an investigation early this year. The company said the problems don't affect any cars currently on the road and don't pertain to any overseas production. The chairman, who I believe is the grandson of the company's founder, he said that the company was potentially in too much of a hurry to get them done while a number of new models were coming online. So they basically abbreviated, air quotes for audio listeners, abbreviated those tests. So that's bad enough for Toyota, but also kind of buried a little bit in the story were Mazda, which reported similar issues and stopped production of 2 models, and Honda, which said it ran improper tests on torque, noise level, and other issues on some models that are no longer in production. So all told, not a great week for Japan's auto safety processes.
I guess if you can get ahead of the story and instead of having a cheating scandal, you have an abbreviation scandal, I guess that maybe doesn't have the same legs.
That is a new one. That is a new way to kind of couch severe safety problems, is abbreviated.
Yeah, it was abbreviated, and the quote, "We're not a perfect company."
Love that.
But if we see anything wrong, we're going to take a step back, and you know what? We're going to keep trying to correct it. Well, Anna, maybe they wouldn't have had to take a step back and correct it if they didn't start abbreviating in the first place.
You can't abbreviate, guys. When we talked about this story initially a few months back when it broke at first about Toyota, I think you and I were on the same page about this, that people would forget about this ultimately.
Oh, yeah.
Because we all have very short memories when it comes to breach of public trust and things like that by automakers.
Unless it's drastic.
But there's been so much drastic stuff. The diesel emission scandals, GM's like...
well, I guess, like mission critical. Like, yeah, diesel, like none of those, it's not like, what was it, the Gremlin that would blow up? Or was it the Pinto?
Toyota alone had the Phantom accelerating? That was Toyota, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I just don't see it as like, I know they're taking some steps to kind of own it, which they need to do. But do I think this impacts Toyota long term in terms of like their market position or their sales figures or anything like that? No,
I don't. I agree, and I actually think that the way they are addressing it helps them. I think it's, I don't know how many fixers they work the language through, but in terms of admitting a mistake and saying they're doing their best to fix it and prevent it going forward. It sounds more accountable than the average scandal.
It's not the crime, it's the cover-up.
Yeah.
True, though. Yeah.
All right. Well, in case you missed it this week, I chose a piece that was a short Q&A that I did with an industry stakeholder. The headline was How Drinking Coffee Can Help Solve Manufacturing's Labor Crisis. In a recent episode of 5 Minutes with Manufacturing.net, I spoke with Mike Franz. He's the co-founder of Shop Floor Coffee. And it's odd because we didn't really think to drink coffee while we did the interview. That would have been a nice touch, And neither of us at any point was like, should we get a cup of coffee? Franz and Amy Teal started Shop Floor Coffee last year as a passion project to give back to workforce development programs in the manufacturing industry. Every year they went to this industry event in Minnesota, and every year one of the top 2 or 3 critical issues to the state of manufacturing was workforce development. According to Franz, 20% of each sale of his coffee goes towards fixing the industry's labor crisis. So he's trying to get coffee on every shop floor across the country. Every factory in the U.S. likely has a coffee pot, and he hopes that manufacturers will make his mission-driven coffee their product of choice, or at least, put it in the rotation. This company already has notable partnerships with AMT, NCATC Skills USA, and they're going to have a prominent feature at IMTS. And another thing that I really liked about this story is that, sometimes you just don't have to take it so seriously, particularly when it comes to the naming conventions for the blends. They have Red Shop Towel Coffee, time and a half. You can drink some first shift. You can also drink Weekend BS and the FNG, which is, means, well, it's the FNG, among others. Are you guys familiar with that acronym, the FNG? Whew. I thought I was, and then I looked it up, and I was, and I'm just like, we have all known the FNG. I chose this story because while it might seem to sound like, pretty pricey coffee, it's for a good cause. And I like any effort to try and help fix the workforce development issues facing the manufacturing industry. And this one in particular stood out to me because they seem genuine. Anna, did you have a chance to check out our coffee talk here?
Yeah, I did. And I've actually seen them at some trade shows before, just in the past year, which is cool. Did Mike give you any indication as, how the money goes to help solve the problem?
Yeah, so they have 6 different organizations that have workforce development programs and initiatives, and the money goes to them in funding their program.
Great, yeah.
He said that basically they picked 6 because they're small, they're more of a startup right now, and he thinks that they can go a longer way with fewer than trying to spread themselves too thin and just kind of like cutting tiny checks. So I think half of them or so were regional, particularly in Minnesota Midwest region. But, as they expand, and he said that, the response has been pretty incredible ever since they got into the market. So hopefully we could see those dollars, spread a little bit to other organizations.
Yeah, that's great.
Andy, your thoughts on Coffee for a Cause?
I was going to see if you could snag some while you're at IMTS.
So he did send
We are
some.
Decidedly not a manufacturing shop, but we do drink an inhuman amount of coffee.
That's true.
That's why, okay, full disclosure, he sent some, but they were like the like tear off single packets or whatever. And we are pretty coffee craven. Like, it's
not an industrial shop, but it is industrial coffee.
Yeah.
For sure.
We refill it. And so like I took one of those packets and I put it in a filter. I'm like, I just don't think that's enough first shift for everybody here. Yeah. So I did take it home to sample it. I apologize, but I left the mug here to share with everybody.
Well, there you go.
The one that I didn't break. No, the one that wasn't broken in shipping. Apologies.
Okay.
But no, so I'll have you over, Enrique, and
nice.
We can have some Red Shop Towel.
Sounds great.
That was the one that I enjoyed. I like Demott's coffee,
Right.
I did like the one thing I wanted to like give him a little bit of guff about was like the one in particular that stood out to me was the relationship with Skills USA. And I just envisioned like all these teenagers trying to like do very skilled labor, like while like shaking. He's like, it's more for the parents at the events.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, we'll move on to our final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
First day of summer vacation starts tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about that. It's not my vacation, but but I don't have to like find everybody's shoes and make lunches and stuff.
Yeah.
So every night.
Yeah.
Just some nights still.
Just a few less.
A few less times.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. No, I was thinking because we're heading out of town this weekend to go camping with some friends. And this time last year, I don't know if you guys recall, but like the month of May was incredibly dry last year. And this end of school year time, it was like an alarming drought in our area.
Like a fire ban. Like you couldn't have anything hot at the campsite.
Yeah, it was like a little bit scary. And now this year we've had the opposite. It has poured like every day, like flash floods for like 2 weeks and on and off severe weather like crazy. And so I've learned that my capacity to complain about the weather is just universal. It doesn't matter if it's a drought, if it's rain. I don't like it. Yeah. So sorry about that. I'll try to be better, but
I'm going to, like every time Jeff says, dig the trench. You got to dig the trench. I know that you're not in a tent this time.
Yeah.
But like maybe still dig the trench.
We might have to. I'll dig it, even though we're in a camper.
Well, I mean, we're still like...
Seems unnecessary, but...
It's definitely one of those summers where it's like, oh, it's done raining, right? Oh, it's not.
It's never done.
It's not done, no. I mean, as much as I forced everybody that listens to the podcast to suffer through me talking about how much I didn't need to mow the lawn last year, just like, I've mowed it like 4 times, it's fantastic. It's coming back to me in waves.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the first week, I was like, oh, okay, I'm already over last year's gas expenditure. My final thought this week was, I just wanted to share, I started reading this book as a joke because my friend made a book recommendation, and I was just like, oh, I didn't know that you turned into such a tool. And he's like, you need to read the book The Gratitude Diaries by Janice Kaplan. And I was just like, sure I do. And then I kind of like started reading it like out of, because I wanted to read it so that way I could more accurately make fun of him for reading it.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's been incredibly useful, not just in a personal way, but also professionally. I wanted to pull out one particular anecdote. She interviewed Doug Conant, the former CEO of the Campbell Soup Company. He took over in 2001, and at the time the company was struggling. But he didn't want to focus on the problems. He wanted to focus on the things that were going well. One of his quotes was, it's usually the 10% of things that go wrong that get 90% of the attention. So he kind of wanted to turn it on its head, and he wanted to say, like, celebrate the 90% that went right. One of the things that he did was 6 days a week for the 10 years he was a CEO, he wrote 10 to 20 handwritten notes. These were personalized thank you notes for a job well done to employees at every level of the company. He wound up raising the company's performance by showing value to the employees at an individual level. He also had managers, he brought in more managers that were a better fit for his culture. They started leading with gratitude, kind of changed the company culture overall. And I think so many times on this podcast, we're talking about toxic company cultures, that this is one in particular. He made other dramatic changes, but he also turned the company around. How you can make some dramatic changes within your company just by showing a little bit of gratitude, not just to the people that work for you, but also the people that you work for. And it can just make it a more harmonious working environment. And, we mentioned it a lot where it's just like, we don't try to talk about the bad all the time. It's just what is the most popular. And as I was reading this, I was just like, that is extremely useful. And it's the entire book. Again, a lot of the book is just reading like, this isn't common sense for people. Like you aren't just nice to your significant other, like you just don't appreciate people or the things that help you. And apparently not a lot don't. So if you don't have a chance to read the book, I definitely recommend just having a little bit more gratitude in your day-to-day life, for friends, family, loved ones, and coworkers. And it just makes life a little bit more livable. Andy, what's your final thought this week?
I wanted to briefly promote an American manufacturer. I procured a new drum kit earlier this year.
Okay.
Made by the good people at Ludwig in Monroe, North Carolina, and it's awesome. So, like most people, I don't require the things I buy to be domestically produced, but it's nice when they are.
Yeah.
So, it's great. And if people are in the market, if there's a weird Venn diagram between drummers and podcast listeners,
I'd like to
consider
I hope you're
Monroe.
not alone in that.
Consider
that
Monroe,
like
North
center
Carolina.
I feel like there are just a lot of bad drum kits out there.
Yep.
Okay.
There for sure. You can find a bad one if you want it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's if you get the cheap one on Amazon, just don't have high expectations.
My dad, he was a drummer too, and he was very much a you get what you pay for guy in that market. So which I've tried to apply as I've become an adult, not to great effect all the time, but
okay,
every so often, like this time.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I look forward to hearing you play it at some obscure location in Wisconsin.
We got them all summer.
Right? It is, man, if anything, Railhopper has shown me some unique locations in the state, and I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Andy, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also email Jeff at IEN.com and talk about how maybe we weren't as contrarian as we normally would be if Jeff was on the episode. You can also subscribe on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday, not Tuesday, every Thursday at 2 p.m. You can also subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Andy Zoll and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.